You don't need a Switch 2. There, I said it. Yes, that's probably why you clicked on this video. But before you rip into me in the comments, just hear me out, okay? As a fellow gamer, there's absolutely a want to get all the latest hardware. I am definitely guilty, especially with the emulator devices. I collect them what feels like every single month I'm buying a new emulator device. However, I had a real heart-to-heart with myself recently, and I think this discussion might be relevant for my audience here on YouTube, and that is, do you actually need a Switch 2? And that's what I want to talk about today. Welcome back to the channel, nerds. Let's just jump right into it. The difference between need and want, I think, is very important. I think when the trailers and the ads started dropping for the Switch 2, a lot of people, including myself, got very excited about what it would be like to have upgraded hardware and what games would be coming out on this device. However, I recently moved, which meant I had to pack up my entire library of games, and more specifically my Switch titles. And as I was packing them and also unpacking them and getting them sorted here in my office, I realized I have a ton of unplayed games. And you know, I've been eyeing the Switch 2. I think I've been falling into a little bit of FOMO, which, you know, hats off to the Nintendo marketing team for invoking the emotion of FOMO to try to get me to buy a Switch 2, which I'm not saying that it's only the ads that contribute to me wanting to buy one. I think just having a new console would be fun, but maybe that's the problem. It's the perceived notion that by having new hardware that somehow is going to feel or provide satisfaction that I'm longing for. And this again opens up a broader question that I think a lot of people in their mid-20s, mid-early 30s are probably experiencing. And according to my YouTube data, that's where my audience is. So I'm going to be speaking really directly to that audience demographic, is that if you're coming into your mid-20s, early 30s, the thing I hear all the time is, I think video games I'm falling out of the love of the hobby of video games. And, you know, I think when I originally heard that being stated, I began to feel that a little bit myself, and like, am I actually just losing interest in gaming in general? I think maybe there's other layers to that. And again, this all does tie back into the Switch 2 conversation, but just follow along with me. I think that, including myself, a lot of people have a lot of games. And when we were growing up, like myself, we probably only had one, maybe two consoles and, you know, just a handful of games. For me, that was the original Nintendo 64. And then as I got older, I got into the PS2. And I only had a few games. For the N64, I grew up on games like Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, let me think, Banjo-Tooie, Donkey Kong 64. There's some really, Mario 64, just some really amazing games that really allowed me to explore this 3D world. It was revolutionary. And then moving into the PS2, I got games like Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2 and Final Fantasy X, which again were just such a mind-blowing experience for a preteen to be experiencing such rich and deep story. I think, you know, I realized that growing up, that the fact that I didn't have a lot of games, it forced me to play through the games that I did have, and I didn't experience what I would classify a lot of you in that 25 to mid 30s age range to be experiencing, and that is choice paralysis and decision fatigue. I'm going to describe a scenario, and I've been here personally. I'm not pointing fingers. I'm talking to a mirror in this instance, but you know, there's been many nights where I come home from work. I'm like, I can't wait to get home and play a game. I'm going to spend, you know, a few hours gaming before I have to go to bed. And I get home, I'm browsing through my Steam store. I'm scrolling through my backlog on my PS5 or my Switch. And I just end up getting bored. And then I hop onto the e-store, whether that's for the Switch or on Steam store. I'll just start browsing, trying to find something that is going to satisfy me. And I think that is actually the core issue here, is that if we're honest with ourselves, we probably have a fairly decent backlog of games that we own that we've never played. And I think if we're honest with ourselves, the Switch 2 proposition for a lot of us is probably tying into the need to feel dopamine or satisfaction through something being new, and then new being considered the thing that will make you not bored. But that's the problem. Now, I'm not saying don't buy a Switch 2. If you have money to drop it and you really feel the hardware upgrade is worth it, by all means get it. I'm not crapping on the Switch 2. But what I am saying is be honest with yourself. And I had that moment with myself when I was looking at my backlog. And that for me was really the question that I wanted to ask myself is, do I need this? And the answer is no. If I just pull up my Switch OLED here, which, man, even just holding this again, it's been a while since I've actually played my Switch. I've been playing a lot on my Steam Deck. But when I have my library pulled up here and I just began scrolling, even before I started filming here today, and actually looking at what I have on my backlog, I'm frankly embarrassed because I already own hardware that is fully capable of playing all of these games without any additional investment. And if I'm really gonna search for fulfillment or combating boredom, maybe I just need to hold myself accountable to actually playing the games that I already own. So for instance, I'm a huge Final Fantasy nerd. I own every Final Fantasy 1 through 10 and 12 on my Switch. And I've only touched Final Fantasy 1 despite owning all of them. And that's a real shame because there's some real good gems in that lineup. I've also got both Zelda games. I haven't even played Tears of the Kingdom yet. I've got Animal Crossing, which, shamefully, I admit I only played just a little bit of before moving on. I got Diablo, Fire Emblem 3 Houses, The Witcher 3. Oh my gosh, it's on my backlog. I've never played The Witcher 3, guys, and I own this on multiple consoles. And that's the problem. Me just saying that out loud, I'm realizing I definitely a person that has fallen into the trap of buying to feel satisfied. And then I wonder why the hobby isn't interesting anymore. And it's because I'm suffering from decision paralysis. What do I play? Well, the problem is I have too much. So holding myself accountable to actually completing games before buying a new one is actually a great principle and really ties into if you need a Switch 2 or not. And in my case, I'm really, advocating to myself here and also to my viewers to be honest with yourself. I mean, my list just goes on and on and on this console. I got tons of indie games, and that's not even including the physical games that are in this drawer behind me here. Just tons and tons of games. And I think that I want to both remind my audience and myself in this moment that I think the doom scrolling on your phone, whether that's through social media or e-stores for new games, I think it's actually melting our brains. And I would really, 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 really encourage my audience here to lean into a challenge. And this challenge, I've actually done this now, I think 2 or 3 times, and it's been very, very rewarding to do this. Essentially, I lock myself into one console and one game for either 30 days or until completion. So I did this challenge back in the springtime while I was doing an international move. I locked myself to my PS Vita and Persona 4 Golden, which I had never played up until that point. And I locked myself into only playing that, which meant no social media, no doom scrolling, and no playing any other kind of game except for P4G. And I fell in love with a game that is now quite dated on original hardware. And I loved every minute of it. In fact, I even got I think my total runtime was like 112 hours or something for my first playthrough. And that's not even including in-game content or New Game Plus. And I loved every single minute of it. And I was like, well, maybe this is a fluke. And a lot of you in my comments were like, oh, the reason why you experienced that level of excitement is because it's Persona 4. I was like, okay, fair enough. Let me rerun this with even simplified hardware on even an older game. So I played Pokemon Crystal exclusively for 30 days during another international flight and several subsequent weeks after that. And I freaking loved it. I've rediscovered my passion for Pokemon because of that challenge. So I'm looping it all the way back around as one, if you are experiencing this over temptation to just buy new hardware, and again, I'm definitely probably part of why you feel tempted, because a lot of the videos on this channel showcase new tech, new handhelds, etc. So I'm sorry if I've stoked the fire in your heart to get new tech to satisfy yourself. But if you're feeling that temptation, specifically even with the Switch 2, gosh, I know even in my circle, my community, if you're on Discord, we all have a ton of games, and I just would implore you. There's been a lot of talk online about getting the new Switch, right? For the new Donkey Kong game or for the new Mario Kart game, which, by the way, those games are still going to be there even if you wait a year to get the Switch 2. You're not going to miss out on some grand experience. And actually, for a lot of us growing up, a lot of us were getting used consoles from like GameStop or EB Games or whatever your local game store was called, a long time after it was initially released. I got the N64 for the first time ever, like 7 years after it was released, and I loved every minute of it. Same thing with the PS2. I was so late to the game. In fact, I was late to the game for every single release until I got into the DS era. And actually, I was gifted the original DS model basically the first few months it was released, and it was a great experience. But when I think back on fond gaming memories, it's always about the games that I spent a lot of time on, and it was usually a result of me not having a lot to begin with. Again, those games like Perfect Dark or Donkey Kong 64, which I'm a huge proponent of. I actually prefer DK64 over the Banjo games, which might be very controversial, but there's just so many amazing memories that I had with games. And I think it's actually a result of having a limited pool versus excess. Now, obviously we're adults now, so that means we have adult money, and there's nothing wrong with investing. I mean, gosh, if I open the drawers behind me, it's just tons of games. And I'm actually been playing around with this app. I forget the name of it, and I won't pull it up now, but I've actually been cataloging every single game that I own for every single console, and I'm going to go through it and basically just choose one game at a time and just do a full completion run before I move on. And I think that's going to actually help me enjoy what I have. Now, I'm going to bring it full circle here back to the original question, or rather the original statement of you don't need a Switch 2. I think that's probably a fact. I don't even know if there's enough games out yet to warrant you dropping what I think it's $450, and if you get a bundle, it's like $500. Is it really worth it? I mean, if you have a considerable backlog or inventory of Switch 1 titles and you have Switch 1 hardware, I think you might honestly find enjoyment with your original console again if you lock yourself into just a few titles for a period of time or until completion. And so I know I'm kind of getting a little preachy in this video, but it's out of care for my community and also out of care for myself. I think a lot of us who say we're falling out of love with the hobby, I challenge you. I challenge you to lock yourself into one game for 30 days and let me know what that does for you. And, if you still hate it at the end of that, then, I'll definitely take that on the chin. But I've run this experiment several times now, and I'm a huge collector. So I got stupid amounts of games, and I'm realizing that, no, I don't need a Switch 2. And a lot of my friends in my circle, whether you're part of the Discord community or I know you in real life, a lot of us, if we're honest with ourselves, though we want a Switch 2, it's probably not needed. And honestly, if we really look at our backlog, and gosh, just looking at mine, I want to jump into some games here too, like Bravely Default 2. I've never even played it. Very excited for it though. Ni no Kuni 2. Again, great looking game. Civ 6. If we're honest with ourselves, I don't even think maybe we really want the Switch 2. Now, there's obviously exceptions to that, right? If you've never had a Switch 1 and you're kind of catching up, right? And you buy a Switch 2 and you're buying a fairly large backlog of Switch 1 titles. Yeah, that use case makes sense. That use case checks out. But I think for a lot of us who already own a Switch, man, I just encourage you, pick one game for 30 days, play it, and let me know in the comments if it at all revived your passion for this hobby. And I'm gonna bet that it probably will. So thanks for listening to me rant, guys. It really means a lot to me, the engagement that I'm getting on this channel. Don't forget to check out my other videos, subscribe, tell your grandma I said hello, that sort of thing. And come hang out on Discord with me. I got some cool people hanging out. And I've really been loving the photos that you guys have been sharing with me with all the cool handhelds that you guys own. So really appreciate that. Guys, it's been great. Thanks for the engagement. Talk to you all soon. Peace.